Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 260. Wow, yeah. Man, guys, let me tell you, way back when we were in the Endeavor and Hawk's arc, I saw them using that teleportation quirk. That was the first time that I ever thought that there was quirk replication going on. But then finding out in this chapter that not only was there quirk replication, but there was also the doctor being the one behind the quirk replication. That was kind of surprising. I had always thought that it was all for one pulling some shenanigan to make quirk replication work, but it's actually pretty cool to know that the doctor's technology, the doctor's science is also what led to quirk replication. Speaking of the doctor though, before we get into anything about the chapter, people were asking me what I thought about the controversy with the doctor's name revealed last week. So I'll just very quickly go through here, but let me tell you guys honestly, I would really not rather touch this, even with an 80-kilometer stick. Look, for the people that don't know, the end result that you need to know is that the name that we got last week is not going to be the final name for the doctor. They're going to have a name change. We don't know what the name is going to be yet. At least I don't know. Maybe a new Twitter update came out, but I didn't see it in the chapter. So just keep that in mind. As to why it had to get changed, because some people had gotten offended. I'm not going to go into what I think about all the specifics, but I will give this from a more neutral perspective. From a business standpoint, it absolutely makes sense that they changed the name. Why would I say that? Well, because Hero Academia was effectively shut out of a market because of the name. I believe, at least from when I read this 2 nights ago, Hero Academia was banned from digital distribution in China. So when you're considering it from the perspective of business, when you're considering it from Shueisha's perspective, it makes a lot of sense to just change the name because you don't want to lose out on that giant market that is China. Do I think it was aggressive that they banned Hero Academia from digital distribution in China? Well, do I think it's aggressive that China banned Winnie the Pooh? I mean, yeah, I do think it's kind of aggressive. In the end of the day, the Doctor isn't a character that is celebrated. He isn't a character that's going to win. He is a villain. He is a person who is suspected of having experimented on his own grandchild. He's not a good person by any stretch of the imagination. I think the context here creates a situation where you're referencing a terrible event, but you're also putting it on an equally terrible person. That's what I think about the context, but at the end of the day, these are just the challenges that come with distributing to a global market. The only other thing I could add is people were saying that it was all a coincidence with the name and what it was referencing in terms of the Japanese experimentation that they did on live humans. Truthfully, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe it was a coincidence. Honestly, the author is really, really good with name work. Like, he loves putting little jokes in the name. So if you told me that the Hero Academia author found a name that not only described the Doctor's physical appearance, but also referenced an event that has relevance in terms of what the Doctor does with his own human experimentation, I'd tell you, yeah, that makes sense to me given the wordplay that the author has done before for names. The author's too clever. I really do believe when it comes to that aspect of was it a coincidence? A coincidence or not? Given the author's track record of being good with names, I think it was totally on purpose, and everyone just kind of underestimated the effect that it was going to have for the markets that they distributed in. But like I said, overall, that whole controversy just shows you, well, the challenges of distributing to a global market, and especially the challenges of distributing to China. It's no secret that China requires certain changes to the material that they allow to circulate within their borders. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's move away from that and go and talk about the Hero Academia chapter proper. What cool things did we get this week? And actually, I think we got like a few cool things. In terms of general stuff, I'm really happy with the chapter. I think the chapter answered a lot of my questions, like a lot of the questions that I posed last week. We got them this week. I'm not doing guesswork anymore because now I have a better idea of what's going on here. I'm really thankful for the author for thinking about all the questions that a reader could potentially have in terms of logistics. Getting rid of the logistics is great, and I loved what we got in the chapter. So starting off with, I think, one of the most valuable pages is the cover page, where we find out that Jaku Hospital and the villa are 80 kilometers apart. Oh, that makes me so happy because now I can get it out of my mind. 80 kilometers, that's 16 hours of walking. That's a ridiculously long distance. These things are not in the same city. I am happy to know that. That makes a lot of sense to me. No one's going to be running... Oh, oops. No one's going to be running over to help Hawks, or no one's going to be running over from the villa to help Endeavor. It's just not feasible. Actually, knowing the distance apart and not counting any teleportation quirks, this does make it a little bit scarier in terms of what happens if one group needs to go help the other group. Mind you, they have a lot of people here, but it's still scary. In terms of characters that could cross the 80 kilometers distance quickly, we don't really have much. Like, maybe Endeavor could fly there. We don't know Endeavor's fly speed. Maybe Hawks could also cross that distance relatively fast. I think we do have some information about how fast Hawks can move, but I can't recall it at this moment in time. But that severely limits how many characters can cross over the battlefield. And again, 80 kilometers apart, 16 hours of walking distance. That's a lot. That's a lot. Still, I'm really happy to get this, and I also like the confirmation that Hawks is currently in the villa. Anyway, we move into page 2. And page 2, the biggest piece of value that I see here, aside from seeing which characters are behind Endeavor, confirming that President Michael's right behind him, is really that 2 other employees noticed the doctor running away. So from the perspective of those 2 employees, they just saw people trip the doctor over. The doctor who in their minds isn't doing anything wrong. So what I like in this page is that the author set up that there were going to be people coming in to tell the heroes off, pretty much. So that was a pretty good setup from the author on that page. We move into page 3, and this page is just, it's a kind of watching the doctor fumble. It's kind of watching the doctor be pathetic. There was something that the author did in the previous chapter that was that he had the character coughing, and then we have the cough being reiterated here when you look at that first panel on page 3. That was probably the only... That was probably the only indicator that the doctor had a degrading health condition. Even though, in this case, like, he's an old man, you would have expected him to have a condition anyway. But yeah, I like that the cough was there. The cough might have also have kind of indicated that he was a double, but I don't think coughs are something that show up with twice as doubles in general. Regardless, he had him coughing in the previous chapter. He had him coughing here. I think that might have been like a small hint that he was deteriorating on the inside if it were not for the quirk. Which leads me into like the real nice part of the page. Aizawa was using his quirk notification immediately. I love that because I love that the characters didn't let any possibilities get by them. I love the characters went in there fully prepared to find a quirk in the doctor. That was great. It shows that the heroes are competent. This is one thing that Hero Academia does really well. The heroes are really competent. It always feels good because it makes these characters feel really respectable. I really like that Hero Academia is not a world where adults are useless. And I think that is deserving of praise. Now, mind you, page 3, we see Aizawa activate it, and then we see, at least from that page, like a rapid deterioration in the doctor's condition. And thankfully, the author doesn't leave this up to debate, and he goes into page 4, and he explains to us that the guy aged the second that he got hit with Erasure. Now, this actually brings up a lot of questions. Kind of about Erasure and kind of about the doctor. First thing is that, given the rapid effect here, it kind of makes it seem like quirk regeneration is sort of a transformation quirk. The reason I say transformation is because transformation is the only thing that has this quick of a change time. Like if Kirishima suddenly transformed and then you have Aizawa coming in and erasing it, he's going to go immediately back to his original form. So that's kind of what quirk regeneration is, his regeneration quirk is doing here. What that also implies, if we're saying that it's not transformation quirk, it implies that whatever age the doctor is at or whatever conditions the doctor has, they are so violent that the doctor needs to have regeneration constantly on to fix it. So from my perspective, I don't think logically, if you have a body that's constantly regenerating, if you were to turn off the source of the regeneration, I don't think that implies that he should age so quickly. I mean, wouldn't he just age at the normal rate of humans? I understand that to show that he is an old man, to show that he has some things going on with his body, this is the best way to do it because it's very stark. It's a very stark change. It's very easy to understand that. I just do wonder about the logistics. I do wonder if he has a disease that's ravaging his body, which causes the aging to just happen like that. Coming in to add a little addendum here, the way I'm thinking about regeneration, Aizawa erasing it shouldn't erase the effects of a regenerated body. For instance, they brought up the Nomus. The Nomu loses an arm and it regenerates the arm. Aizawa using his quirk shouldn't somehow take out the arm that was regenerated. That just doesn't make sense. So from that perspective, the conclusion that I ultimately come to is that the Doctor is so old that he ages within a second. Although if he's aging that quickly from how old he is, it's like, why aren't you dead already? You should. But again, guys, I'm just nitpicking. But I would really like to know what you guys think. What's your logistics? How would you approach the situation? What do you think is going on? It's just a little thought exercise. It's not really a big deal here. One thing though, if the Doctor ends up having a quirk that's actually more like making the illusion of a younger man, that'd be really interesting because the Doctor still was coughing earlier. The more likely possibility though, keeping everything in mind though, is probably just the Doctor received the regeneration quirk when he was as old as he looked when the quirk was cancelled. So the quirk, when it's gone, just he goes back to his base state, which I think again doesn't make sense with the idea of this guy's body was regenerated to a younger form. That doesn't really make sense unless there's an aggressive aging process going on. Anyway, after that, the characters go into their long little bit talking about, is this the quirk that kept All for One alive for so long? Then we go into the replication idea because they classify this as a rare quirk. This makes sense. I think in the second movie for Hero Academia, they have talked about how regeneration quirks are rare quirks in general. And then they conclude it is quirk replication or artificial quirks. So this conversation is important because there is some talk about whether or not the heroes knew what was going on here. It does seem like the heroes had suspicions, like they saw that there were too many coincidences here, or there was too many instances of regeneration in general. I liked what the author did here because it showed that the heroes weren't exactly sure. It's either they replicated one quirk or he was actually making new quirks. Of those two things though, I think it's better that it is quirk replication, because if he was making quirks just from scratch, that'd be kind of scarier. At least with replication, you need to have the initial base to make it. There's a limit there. Anyway, we move on to page 5, which is the Present Mike page. And Present Mike makes a really good point that this guy has a regeneration quirk and he can apply it to other people. He should have applied it to health. And I think that's a really good point there. Like, this guy could legitimately have made a giant difference in the world. He could have gone in and changed people's lives for the better. But then you go into Present Mike's bit of, well, anger. And what I really like here is that the author set this up really well, right? When we go back to the original Aizawa Present Mike Kurogiri arc, one of the end notes of that arc was that Present Mike was really mad. As you remember, he said he would he would make a bowl of his boiling blood or something like that. Anyway, he said he was really angry. So we see the anger come back out here. Now, here's what's interesting, or not really interesting, but here's what I want to ask you guys. And this isn't to knock down Hero Academia. This is just a general question. Do you think that Present Mike was unprofessional in this situation? They're in the middle of an operation, and here you have Present Mike going ahead and grabbing the guy and pretty much yelling at him. I think this is a situation where, you should probably keep your emotions under control, especially because this is a dangerous situation where you don't know what could happen. In this case, there's no moves around, but we do see that this moment may have worked against the heroes a little bit. Because of this moment, people came in to help the Doctor because this, from their perspective, looked really bad. So when it comes to emotional outbursts, I do think that the general rule is for people who are in these kind of activities to keep things under control. You don't want to get too angry because the anger will cloud your judgment. In this case, there wasn't anything that was negative. There wasn't any negative consequence, but it was also valuable because the author set up that Present Mike was going to be this angry. So it was cool to see the follow through from that previous moment. But I do wonder how the heroes would have thought about this, or I do wonder if the heroes saw this as like a potential misstep, just because again, letting Present Mike get ahead of himself and letting him have his moment there did allow the opportunity for failure to pop up, especially when you had civilians getting involved. That's the one thing the heroes don't want to have happen. They don't want the civilians to get in the way because that might accidentally put them in danger. What do you guys think overall? Do you think he was not professional, or do you think this is allowable in the situation? We move into page 6 and we see the direct results from President Mike suddenly doing all that. We see that President Mike got surprised. So right there, President Mike wasn't paying attention to the situation around him. He got tunnel vision. He was surprised that the doctor suddenly pushed him off, as given by the exclamation mark. And then we have the people getting involved, to which Endeavor very quickly has to direct people to grab them and get them out of the way. After that, we go into a very quick information, like a little bit of an update panel, telling us that they're evacuating the entire hospital in case they need to fight any Nomu. So what's really good about this is that it reminds you that the heroes are in fact thinking about a lot. The heroes are being very careful with what they're doing here. And again, I appreciate how careful the heroes are being. They're being the most careful they possibly can. Now, cool little details, because there are some in this page. We do see Ectoplasm cloning himself to carry people out. So they're carrying people out in beds because there are probably people that can't move around. And we also had a guy using telekinesis. That was really cool. On the other panel, we got to see Tiger. Oh, I forgot his zero name, but we know who it is. We get to see him carrying out a little kid. The kid looks really excited. And then the person next to him, do you recognize that guy? That guy was from Gentle's flashback. That's Gentle's classmate. He's here. That's cool. I figured that the author was going to put him, and I was trying to look for him in the previous chapter. But it makes sense that he's here, given that he's going to pop up in the anime. Probably he's in the author's mind. It's cool to see him here, even though he was only a flashback character. Good to know he's still in the hero game. Anyway, we move over into page 7, where we have, I think, Endeavor possibly monologuing that hopefully nothing bad will happen because Nomu are brain dead. So they're assuming, like, if we catch the doctor, it'll all be good. And we have that juxtaposed to, and guys, I can't pronounce her name proper. I'm just going to say Bunny Girl. I have a lot of trouble with that name. But we then have Bunny Girl working through. So given that Bunny Girl ends up by herself towards the end of the chapter, I do think it's important to note that there were heroes behind Bunny Girl. The reason that's important to note is because that implies that people might be able to reach her in time. Like maybe give them 5 or 10 minutes and maybe they will get to where she is by the end of next chapter. So she's not going to be fighting alone most likely unless something goes seriously wrong. Anyway, we go into page 8, and page 8 is just an Aizawa panel. Honestly, the value of that page to set up that something's about to go wrong and just to give Aizawa a good looking shot. I don't see any more value in the page other than making the doctor look pathetic and signaling the sudden turn of events. Anyway, we move into page 9 and we see that someone, our little bunny girl, is getting very happy because she is seeing some adversaries ahead of her. So this was really good because this reminds you that Bunny Girl, I want to say her name, Mirko, I can't pronounce it. Bunny Girl loves combat. We know this from the Dobby Endeavor Hawks fight. She was there. She was battle ready. She loves battle. So we got to see that in this chapter. He answered that aspect of the girl's character. Anyway, we go in and we see the different Nomu designs. I think they're really cool. I kind of like the one with the really long hands. That one's pretty neat. There's another one that's head looks kind of squished. I think it's really cool, and there's also one coming from the ceiling. Overall, the Nomu designs are pretty neat. There's even one, now that I'm looking at it, oh my gosh, there's one with some creepy hand action going on there. This area's got 2 hands melded into one. Holy crap. Man, that doctor has way too much time on his hands. Anyway, we have the signal of things about to go wrong, and then we get into page 10 and 11, where we see the guys break out of the floor, and the doctor gets impaled. So the moment the doctor gets impaled, there's 2 things you would be thinking before you got to see the final panel on that double spread. That being that maybe he's killing himself so he doesn't give away details, but then you see he's a double, and that makes a lot of sense. Pretty much the doctor, who was watching this the whole time, sent in the Nomus to get rid of him, to tie up loose ends, because you don't want to deal with that kind of problem. So this was a pretty cool little thing that we had going on here. There was a little detail that the author put in with Aizawa, being that Aizawa closed one eye, and then we saw that the doctor immediately got rejuvenated. Anyway, any other things going on in this double spread? Well, we had the 2 Nomu, one inside of the mouth and the other that broke through the wall. I think they make an interesting pair. I love the amount of drills on them. That's pretty cool. And then we have a little bit of a monologue by the doctor where he's questioning if they knew that he had replication technology. He should have been ready for the guy having replicated twice, given that he's in the same organization as twice. So, you know, we had a nice little bit of goading there. I appreciated it, although the next page kind of makes it a little bit, kind of muddies it up a little bit. Other thing that I think was of value on that page was specifically the panel where the doctor noted that organisms created by the double quirk aren't nullified by erasure. That's information that we already knew. We knew this from the moment that Aizawa laid eyes on Dobby in the camp. So this is information we already know that we're just seeing the doctor get caught up on now. So their information sharing wasn't the best, although I'm not sure if the villains were aware that Aizawa wasn't able to erase the actual the doubles. Anyway, page 12, we go and we see where the doctor currently is at, and Endeavor confirms to us that it is twice his quirk. Now, what's interesting here is that the author showed a new area. So one of the panels was one of the old areas that we had seen before. It goes into a little place, and then we see Shigaraki in a tube. Now, Shigaraki in the tube looks pretty cool. He looks like he has some black straps across his body. I'm really interested in that. I want to see if the author's going to use that design. It would be pretty neat if the author does. But yeah, no, it's kind of cool to see Shigaraki in the tube like that. Anyway, the doctor goes in and he continues the little monologue of how could they have known that I had a double, and he justifies it by saying that the double was handling everything while he was preoccupied with Shigaraki. So what I'm seeing there, they wouldn't have known that I had a double because the double was there the whole time. Therefore, there weren't any times for me to switch with the double. That's what I understand. So when you look back to the idea that the informer had a picture of the doctor going into the lab, what I'm thinking is from that dialogue, it makes it seem like the one that went into the lab itself was the guy's double. Maybe the double came into the lab just to quickly have a powwow with the main doctor, talk to him, maybe update on some stuff, and then move on. Maybe that's all they were doing. Maybe get like an updated situation. Like who knows, right? So that's what I take away from there. He's just saying that we were so thorough with this, or we were just so separate that they wouldn't have that opportunity to even think that I made a double at some point in time. He might also be questioning, could they actually know that he had quirk replication technology? Given what the heroes were saying, it seems that they were stuck on one of two alternatives. Anyway, the next sequence is kind of interesting because of how it works out. The doctor runs past some screens, which tells the reader, okay, so he was watching the whole situation going on. You can also tell that there's some mood whiplash where he's talking about how much he loves Shigaraki as his #1 project, and then he's like cursing the heroes. He gets on his chair, so that's calling back to that wonderful little chair he had back when we saw him in this area. He gives us the confirmation that he's still in the hospital by saying, I didn't want to abandon the hospital. What that tells you is that, remember back when we saw Shigaraki on a table and it looked like they were in a hallway? When you look at this environment down here and how dark it is, honestly, I think he was working on Shigaraki in one of the upstairs rooms. It just seems that's the way. Point is, though, he's still working out of the hospital. Anyway, what I think was really funny with the whole thing with the chair was that he gets on it to leave the area where Shigaraki is housed in. At that point, we get to see his collection of quirks, confirming that he only needs a small sample of a quirk to make a copy of it. After he gets out of that area and he's back in the main area with all the tubes, we do get to see that there are more tubes than we thought initially. It was pretty interesting because the author started that whole double page with the image that we had seen before that had the 10 tubes. Here, now it kind of implies that the amount of high ends here might be more than we can see. So it's not just the nice estimate of 10. Now with another row of tubes and some behind that, there might be legitimately as many as the author needs for the plot to work, which is what's raising concerns for Bunny Girl. Anyway, what I think was really funny was that the place is covered in wires. There's wires everywhere. So you go into the final panel of page 13 and you see that the doctor started running. So pretty funny. I don't understand the value of having him get on a chair and then get off and then continue running along. But when you go into the next page, it kind of makes more sense. You go to page 14 and 15 and you see Bunny Girl just destroying things, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you see that the doctor was running over for Johnny because he needed Johnny to warp them out of there. And given that Johnny was on a walk, what that tells you is that the doctor was frantic because he was going looking for Johnny. He didn't know where Johnny was, so he was checking the whole environment. Johnny has something trailing behind him, so maybe the doctor was following that. So it was pretty cool to see the doctor run through his environment and also see why he was running. It's because he's looking for poor little Johnny. Anyway, Bunny Girl busts through and she has cornered the doctor while also killing Johnny. It was really gross. And with that, we can go back to the previous page of Bunny Girl just wrecking everything on the way there. The big thing that I want to just say here for that Bunny Girl destroying everything is, one, thank God this is anime and anime physics are applied to her clothes, because her outfit is so tight, it's like it's painted on, and good for her. But yeah, no, she took out so many Nomus that it's honestly like, wow, yeah, no, you're really effective. Remember Endeavor taking out a Nomu? Well, he had to go into Blue Flame, and then Stain was able to take out a Nomu just by hitting its brain, and these are the normal Nomu. So, you know, they're not as strong as the high ends, but it's still pretty impressive to see her just rip things heads off. And then you have her saying that it's a rush, which really makes you think that this girl probably wants to kill people on a regular basis, but she's a hero, so she doesn't do that. But now that they're Nomu, it's like, yeah, do it. Anyway, it's a really grotesque page. Good for her. Johnny's dead. His eyeballs have fallen out of his body, and she busts through, and we get the specific bit of some of the vials falling off, which, with the emphasis that the author put on that, I think he's just showing how the doctor's work is being shattered. I do appreciate what Bunny Girl did there with that dynamic entry, because that probably puts All For One and the Doctor back like a few couple years. So anything like that is worthwhile. Anyway, going specifically into this thing now with Bunny Girl and talking about the future, what could we be seeing from this point on? Well, I think this is a pretty interesting situation. People are worried that she might be in trouble. So let's talk about the narrative. Like, what are the narrative forces behind Bunny Girl? Well, she's battle hungry, but we got to see that aspect of her character here. The other prominent aspect of her character is that she's a lone wolf. She doesn't believe in really working together with other people. So if we're talking about a problem that could be presented to her, a problem that we can see here is that she gets outnumbered and she realizes the value of teamwork afterward. This would require her living for a while later, so that she has that moment to reflect on, yeah, things got easier when we were working together as a team. Now, mind you, is she weak enough that that kind of rhetoric is going to happen here? I'm not too sure. When we talk about what possibilities are here, there's one I'm really excited about, but right now the other is just the high ends that are in the tubes are released. We don't know what condition those high ends are in. We don't know if these are the end all be all. We don't know if they're going to be at the same level as the one that took out Endeavor and Hawks. We'd have to see. But if 10 of them get unleashed, it's like, well, she's going to be in trouble. But she has 10 people, or sorry, she has a bunch of heroes coming up behind her because there were heroes following her into the morgue. So she would only have to hold out a bit. What I'm actually way more excited about is Shigaraki coming out, and it's incomplete Shigaraki, because right now the Doctor has lost his opportunity to get out of there. He doesn't have his teleporter unless he has another small Nomu with teleportation. How could the Doctor get out of there with Shigaraki? Because I don't think Shigaraki's going to get caught here. I think Shigaraki's getting out of here. The way I see it, if the Doctor unleashes the Nomu and then runs towards Shigaraki, maybe the Doctor could unleash incomplete Shigaraki. And really, all incomplete Shigaraki needs to be able to do is to activate Disintegrate. I don't need to see him do anything else. If Shigaraki goes and touches the floor and Disintegration starts, and it's like the high-powered Disintegration that took down a whole city, it's pretty much every hero that is touching the floor, because the floor is connected to everything else in the hospital. They're going to be affected by decay, right? So that by itself would be enough to do a massive bit of damage. And if the author wanted to go down that, well, possibility, you could have a lot of heroes, you know, realizing that they're being decayed, a lot of heroes cutting off their legs or limbs or whatever else was touching, a lot of heroes finding ways to deal with the decay or running away from the building before decay comes and hits them. Like, there'd be a lot of ways to make damage without the heroes actually taking up too much time fighting. And all you need is decay. And that would be enough to show that Shigaraki is terrifying. And incomplete Shigaraki, I feel, would be capable of doing like his original quirk anyway. I think that could work. Really, the answer as to how the Doctor can get out of the situation all lies on the escape route. I sincerely doubt that Shigaraki is going to get captured in its incomplete state. And if he were to get captured, there's so many villains that could potentially bust him out. But in terms of like what could happen in the next moment, well, has the author telegraphed it for us? The previous chapter implied that President Mike and Aizawa were going to get their moments to say cool stuff to the Doctors because they were right behind Endeavor. There's no reason to have them right behind Endeavor. Well, Aizawa, yes, there's a reason to have him right behind Endeavor. But President Mike, there's no reason to have them right behind Endeavor unless they were going to have a moment. So using that kind of thinking, you could see that. Given that we saw the tubes of the high ends in this chapter, the author's reminding us of it, very well the Doctor could unleash them. I don't see any reason why the Doctor wouldn't. The thing is that Bunny Girl might get lucky in that they're incomplete. If the high ends are incomplete, Bunny Girl gets to fight them without having to really risk too much. We'll have to see. The Doctor is really freaked out. He doesn't hide his shock very well. He wasn't expecting to see that destroyed instantly, so I'm very excited to see where we could go from here. I am really rooting for incomplete Shigaraki, but to get to incomplete Shigaraki, the Doctor has to hold her back, and this chapter established that regular Nomu won't hold her back, so he has to use the high ends. Oof, man, it's exciting. I hope we don't switch to Hawks' team next week. Any other things to say for the chapter? Well, no, not really. I'm just pretty excited overall, man. I want to see it. I want to see the incomplete Shigaraki, man. I want to see what he's capable of. He's only got 1 month to go, so he must be pretty cooked by now. You guys, let me know what you thought down below. Let me know what parts you enjoyed of the chapter. I think this was really cool, man. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.